Thanks for joining me in the next installment of my top 100 games of all time. Today we're going to be talking about numbers 75 through 51. If you missed it, my video that is numbers 100 through 76, I'll put a link down below. And when I create the next video, numbers 50 through 26, I'll also link that down below so you can find it there. So there's some surprises in this list, and there's also 5 games whose titles start with the word tiny. Go figure. All right, well, let's get to the list. All right, let's start right off with a tiny game at number 75, Tiny Epic Galaxies. So you can see 1 to 5 players, designed by Scott Almes, as all the Tiny Epic games are. I'm a big fan of the Tiny Epic games, have been since the beginning. So kudos to Gamelin Games for those. This was my favorite Tiny Epic game for a long time. What you're essentially doing is you're trying to settle or conquer these planets, and then they become part of your empire. And every time you do that, they give you some special ability. So on your turn, you roll dice, and then you decide, what do you want to use the dice for? Do you want to get more energy? Do you want to get more culture? Do you want to deploy a ship or use some ability from a planet or something like that? So it's a dice roller, and then decide what to do with the dice, right? So you've got this sort of output randomness. What am I going to do with what I rolled? And it has this interesting follow mechanism where you can use, if you want, you can use one of your culture that you've accrued to do an action that somebody else did as an action. And that's pretty interesting. I do feel like it has sort of meant that a culture engine is maybe the best way to play the game. I think I usually see people who focus on culture winning the game. And so I think maybe that's why it's fallen down a little bit for me, because the game, as I play it now, it feels a little bit samey. But there are expansions that add some new elements to it too. So yeah, check out the whole Tiny Epic series, but Tiny Epic Galaxies is my number 75. At 74, another tiny game, right? So I have Tiny Towns. It says 1 to 6 players, but really you could play as many players as you want with this. I mean, you're sort of limited by components. I actually have 2 sets, so I can play up to 12 players in a big group. But what you're doing is there are buildings that are put out for the length of the game. So you've got all these different symbols, like you've got the orange one here and the red one here, and you always have the cottage. But for these others, there are different cards that might come out. So this could be a fountain instead of the millstone or something like that. And there's a pattern there. And what you have to do is you have to make a pattern on your board. And when you do make that pattern on your board of cubes that are like that, this can be rotated or mirrored or flipped or whatever. It doesn't have to strictly be that in that orientation. But when you do that, you can choose to put the marker for the building in that space, in one of the spaces that was occupied by one of these cubes. And then, that frees up a lot of space. So this one, it's only going to take up 1 space where you were taking up 5 trying to build it. Everybody has 1 private building that they can build that does some special thing for them. There's 2 different ways to play this game. One where the active player decides what resource should come out. So this is like wood and stone and brick and glass, and you've got all these different resources. We actually like to play with the cards, where you deal a card that lists what everybody needs to put out, which is a variant in the rules. And then every, I think, 3rd round it is, you get to put down whatever you want in your area. And so it's just sort of a puzzle. Where am I going to fit these Tetris pieces in? And what's going to come out next? Maybe I'll get lucky, or not. And if you have spaces on your board that are, have resources in them, but you didn't make buildings with, those are negative at the end of the game, and then all the things score differently. So it's fun because it's a different game every time you play, because the different buildings that come out, that variability, and just the large player count, simultaneous play works pretty well for my group. So my number 74, Tiny Towns. At 73, we have yet another Tiny Epic game, Tiny Epic Quest. So Tiny Epic Quest only supports up to 4 players, but again, Gamelin Games and Scott Almes. And the game goes in two phases. So there's the day phase and then there's the night phase. And the day phase, there are some cards up here which describe how your meeples can move around the map. And these are those plastic item meeples that you can physically attach different weapons and stuff to. One of the active player chooses which one of the movement things to do, and everybody has to sort of abide by those movement rules to move one of their meeples, or just not move at all. And there's all kinds of different locations to move to on the map. You can move to temples because you're trying to get up the track to complete a quest or get a legendary item. You can go to an obelisk because you're going to try to learn a spell later. So these are temples and obelisks. And there are castles where you can sort of heal yourself. There are goblins that you can fight, which are worth points at the game. So you move around the map and get all your meeples in the positions where you want. And then in the night phase, there's this push your luck mechanism going on where everybody takes turns rolling dice, and you have to deal with the dice that come up. And if you don't want to roll the dice, you can rest. But then you've decided, well, I've got enough of what I need. I've rolled enough dice to move my person up the temple track, or I think the spell track, the magic track, or whatever it is far enough along that I can learn the spell that I want to learn because my guy is at the obelisk, etc. Because otherwise, when damage is dealt, it's dealt evenly to everybody. So on your turn, if you decide not to rest, every other player is going to get a chance to maybe roll those dice and deal damage to you before it even gets back around to you, and you decide that you're going to rest for the end of that turn. There's a lot going on here. It's got a very sort of Zelda theme to it, and it's very puzzly with the movement and deciding, which order you're going to move things around in. But then you combine that with the sort of push your luck and the dice rolling and getting these items that power up your meeples and get them to do stuff. It's a really interesting combination. And this is another one of those games that's comes in a tiny box, but has a really pretty big table presence and has a lot going on for a tiny game. All right, next at number 72, I have Glen More. So it's interesting, I've always been interested in playing Glen More, just never got around to it. And then Glen More 2 came out, so lo and behold, lots of cheap copies of Glen More ended up on the secondary market. So I was finally able to get a copy to play. So this is a Kramer game, 2 to 5 players. And what you're doing is you're building this little area up for your, Scottish clan. One mechanism that I really like, and I've heard this referred to as a time track mechanism. And the idea is whoever is in back, whoever's marker, meeple, whatever is in back, is the next person to go. And they can jump off as far ahead as they want to take anything. But then it might be a while before they get another turn because people could move and move and move and move. And if you're all the way in the back and there's several things in front of you, you can just take all of those things. And so what you're doing is you're taking things that you can place in your area, and you have to place them next to one of your meeples. When you place them, they activate all the tiles around them. And there are different buildings that you can get that give you points in different way, and you can get whiskey, which is sort of points, and there are other resources that you need to be able to, have these buildings and stuff. So there's a lot going on, but it's the time track mechanism that I like. I like the sort of, there's a little bit of an engine things. You can see down here, somebody's producing cattle. And then if you've got some other building where you can auction off and sell the cattle for points, that's, that's a good thing to be able to do. Glen More, interesting game if you like this sort of time track mechanism. Next is Raptor. So there are not a lot of 2-player only games on my list. I know for sure there's another one coming up on the list, but this is one of my favorites. Bruno Faiduti and Bruno Cathala. So that's an interesting and strong combination of designers there. And the artwork by Vincent Dutrait is really good on this too, I think, anyway. And so what it is thematically, one of you plays as the raptor. So you're the mama raptor and you have like 5 little baby raptors. And the other player plays as the scientists. Okay, so the goal for the mama raptor, the way you win is you either eat all the scientists or you get at least 3 of your babies to safety off the edge of the map. The scientists either need to put the mama raptor to sleep or put 3 of the babies to sleep, I think, is the win condition. And the way that the game plays is you have cards that go from 1 to 9. Both of you have cards, and they're asymmetric, what they do. And you both secretly choose a card to play that round. And then you turn them over. And so whoever played the lowest number, so say I played the 4, I get to do the ability that's on the card, whatever it says. Because, so I'm the 4, I'm the lowest. And say you played the 7. Instead of doing the ability on your 7, you get 7 minus 4, so 3 action points to move, like say you're the scientist, to move around and dart the babies or something like that. And then that card is out of circulation until you play your 1 to get them all back. So it has this interesting push-pull where you're trying to figure out what your opponent is doing, but then there's certain things that you want to do. And sometimes you want to play a card for its ability, but sometimes you just really want actions, but you don't know if you're going to which one you're going to get to do. If you know that your opponent is going to play their 1 to recycle their hand this round, and you can play your 9, you're going to get 8 actions, which is crazy, So it's got that sort of get in the mind of your opponent thing that I think is fun in 2-player games. And some people thematically don't like this. Interestingly enough, I've never heard anybody complain about the mama raptor eating the scientists, but I have heard people complain about the scientists capturing the baby raptors. So that's a little amusing to me. But anyway, if you're not turned off by the theme, I would say this is a really good 2-player game, and you should check it out. My number 71, Raptor. At number 70, I have a classic, 7 Wonders. So from 2010, so that's 12 years old now, and I don't think this game is going anywhere. What it is it's a card drafting game, and there are 2 expansions that I normally play with. The Cities expansion adds actually an 8th player, so you can play with up to 8 players, which is nice for my group. And the Leaders expansion, which gives you a direction to sort of focus on, which some players in my group prefer that. They prefer having some special thing that, encourages them to focus on something, although you don't have to. So we play with Leaders and Cities, but just the base game is great. What you're doing is you're drafting cards, and then you're trying to decide, what are the different things that the cards do. So some cards allow you to produce stuff. That's what these do, these production ones that get stacked on your board. You natively produce something from your empire's board here. You can also get cards that allow you to get goods from your neighbors, maybe cheaper than just buying them. You have military cards, because at the end of every turn, or at the end of every age, there's 3 ages, you're going to fight a war with your neighbors, and the winners of that get some victory points. There are cards that are just straight up points, and then there are the green science cards, which is like a set collection thing going on, and there are these purple guild cards that do a lot of different things. You could also decide to use one of your cards to build one of the phases of your wonder. So instead of playing that card that turn, you can just tuck this under here to say, I built the first phase of my wonder. And there's you have resources like this one. I guess it looks like you have to have 2 stone to be able to do that, right? So if you've only got, say, 1 stone, you got to get a stone from a neighbor, and you got to pay for that. So you got to have money to do that. It's interesting in that it feels sort of like a gateway game, but there's a lot of symbology going on here. This for a while was probably my favorite drafting game, card drafting game. Sushi Go Party replaced it as the game that I will show people as their first card drafting game, and then something else coming up on the list sort of replaced it as a card draft, my favorite card drafting game for me, I think, because that one also has some engine building going on. But still, a classic game, and still number 70 on my list, 7 Wonders. All right, at 69, I have Robinson Crusoe, Adventures on the Cursed Island, which just recently had a crowdfunding project to get like some mega fancy version of it. But I'm happy with all the stuff I have for it now. So this is from Portal Games, designed, I think, originally by Ignacy Trzewiczek, but there's another designer listed here too. Interesting. And this is one of the few games that I've actually played solo. So it plays 1 to 4 players. But I did play it solo once. This is, I don't know, maybe a Polish version of the game. But you have a character, and it's cooperative. And everybody plays a different character, and you've got a scenario. So in the sort of default first scenario in the game, you're just trying to collect some wood to light a signal fire to get off this cursed island because you've been shipwrecked here. And you have every turn you decide, what am I going to do? Am I going to explore to turn over more tiles? Am I going to build up the protection for my camp in case there are animals? Am I going to deal with these events that are going to hurt me? Am I going to go hunt animals for food? And I'm going to build these different inventions that help me collect wood, or am I going to go collect resources and, to put them on the pile or whatever? So there's a lot of different choices, and you can't do everything, right? You just don't have time to do it. And that's the interesting part of this game, because anytime you decide to do an action, you can use one of your action pawns. I like to think of it like, say, a day and a night. If I decide to spend the whole day, both of my sort of actions for that day, doing the action, it is guaranteed to succeed. If I want to spend, half my day doing the one thing and half my day doing another thing, and both of those things might fail, because if you only put one action marker there, you have to roll the die to see what the outcome is. And so you might not succeed. You might succeed and bad things might happen. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff going on there. And there's a tendency to want to just guarantee that all your actions are going to succeed, but you will lose the game doing that. You absolutely have to push your luck to win the game. So you've got to decide when you're going to do that. And that's one of the other good things about, so a lot of co-op games can have sort of the alpha gamer problem. So one way that this mitigates the alpha gamer problem is you don't know. You don't know if you're going to succeed or not. You don't know if you should do, one pawn here and one pawn there, or two here or whatever, because the outcome is going to be random from a die. So there is no right decision necessarily. So anyway, it is a longer game. It is very hard to sort of figure out the symbology and everything going on in this game, but it is worth it. So I suggest, if you like hard co-op games, this one's probably going to beat you 85% of the time, is what I hear. I actually have a higher success rate than that. But maybe I'm lucky, or maybe I played it wrong. I don't know. Who knows? Because every time I pick this up, I feel like I have to relearn the game to play it. But yeah, check it out. My number is 69, Robinson Crusoe, Adventures on the Cursed Island. And at number 68, I have Francis Drake. So 3 to 5 players. I don't think I've ever played it at 5 players. But if you look here, you can see this has that sort of time track mechanism again that I like. So before you're ready to do your voyages, you have to outfit your ship. And so you can decide, am I going to take this thing, or am I going to jump ahead to this thing, or am I going to grab that, or whatever, right? So you've got to decide, gosh, if I don't jump ahead and take that, somebody else is going to take that. But if I jump ahead, they're going to get all these other things. And what do I do? So, again, that's something I like in a game, and we have that here. Then after that, you send your ships out, and everybody decides sort of secretly with their markers where they're going to allocate their mission discs. And you don't know, somebody could be bluffing, I guess, because they have the ghost ship one, or you don't know the priority that somebody has put on the thing, because you're only going to end up doing, I think, two of the missions. Each location, only 2 is what I meant to say. 2 missions, 2 people can do the thing. So if, multiple people put their discs out, then only the ones with the higher numbers get to do it. So there's a question, who put what where, and, try to figure out, did somebody want this more than that? Are they bluffing going there at all? And so that's interesting. And then, you're deciding whether you want to go invade a village, invade a fort, or go try to rob a galleon, or you can actually just do some trading to get some goods for this set collection thing. So again, I like the sort of romanticized Caribbean pirate theme, which is what you've got going on here with Francis Drake. So that sort of drew my attention to the game, combined with this. And then you play it out, and it's not a short game by any means, but I find it to be a good a good way to spend an afternoon. So my number 68, Francis Drake. My number 67 is The Castles of Mad King Ludwig. So this is another one that has gotten a recent crowdfunding campaign to produce a sort of deluxe version of it, and a colossal, where the pieces are 4 times the size, version of it. So this is, designed by Ted Alspach from Bezier Games. And this is not a castle that you would build during the game, but this is just all the different castle tiles laid out. One thing about this game is there is this master builder role. And so the master builder puts, you take the tiles that are available for auction that round, and you sort of price them out on the board. And so you decide what tile goes where. And then if people decide to buy those tiles, you get the money. And that's how you get money on your turn. And then when it's not your turn, you are buying, tiles and paying that money. You also buy a tile on your turn, but you go last. So it's not like you can just say, hey, here's the tile that I want. I'm going to make it the cheapest, because somebody else will just buy it and it won't be available for you. So it's an interesting decision. It's means that you have to have the right kind of person to play this game with, because if someone is AP prone and it's their turn to be the master builder, this game can be a slog. But I don't have that problem with my group, so we enjoy playing Castles of Mad King Ludwig. My kids enjoy playing with the tiles, just building castles, which is what you see here, a castle that's just been built. But it has a lot of interesting mechanisms. Some rooms don't like to be next to other rooms. These underground rooms give you bonuses for having different types of rooms. And so there's a lot of different ways to score points, get more objectives. Those objectives give you points, or rooms that get you money. But I think really the theme and just this castle that you build is what drew me to the game and keeps drawing me back to it. So my number 67, Castles of Mad King Ludwig. All right, next up is at 66, Paper Tales. So Paper Tales is a relatively new game to me, but I've really been enjoying it. So again, this is a card drafting game for 2 to 5 players. I play with the expansion, which gives you some additional buildings and then just a bunch more cards in the deck. But it plays out in 6 different phases. Each turn plays out in 6 different phases, and the iconography here is really good in this game. So you draft these different cards in the first phase, and in the second phase you have to put them out. So normally at the beginning you'll have a 2 and a 2 sort of formation, where the ones in the front fight and the ones in the back don't, unless they're sort of ranged attack or something. If you have a building, you can put a 3rd one up front. You can have 5 out. You fight a war with your neighbors to get some points, and then there's income, and you can construct a building. And then one of the things that I think is most interesting thing about this game is you're building this engine, but it's constantly changing, because in phase 6, you're going to age everything that is here, unless you do something to prevent that. And things that are already aged will die. So typically a card is only going to be out there for a couple of rounds for you. And I think that's an interesting thing about the game. And it's also really fast. You can play through a game of this in 30 minutes. So I suggest that you do that. Go do that right now. Just pause the video. Go play Paper Tales. My number 66, Paper Tales. At number 65, I have another drafting game, Draftosaurus. So this is a really light drafting game. You can see it's got a 15-minute listed playing time here. 2 to 5 players. Again, I have got 2 copies of this, so I can play more player counts with a little bit of modification. But you've got a board, and there's 2 different boards that you can work with. This is double-sided, and so they score differently. But what you're doing is, on your turn, you are drafting a dino meeple from the sweaty set of dinos that were in somebody else's hand that gets passed to you, unless you have some kind of container to pass them around in. But you draft the dino meeple, and you have to put it somewhere in your zoo. And in some places you want to put, I think this one is having the different types. And if you have T-Rexes, they can be worth extra. If you put one here, it's not worth anything unless it also has a pair in there. And so, these are all, I guess, have to be the same. And then you get a bunch of points for having a lot of the same. And then things that don't fit anywhere else can go in the water here, and they're just worth a point. And so it's just a basic drafting game. You're just dealing with what you've been handed in the draft and figuring out how to allocate it. And then you see, how to add up the points. It's real simple, and I like the theme, right? Like, I like this theme of a sort of dinosaur zoo, and it's something that you can play with just about anybody. They don't really have to know a lot about games to play a game like this, or you can play with kids too. So there you go. My number 65, Draftosaurus. Okay, at number 64, I have the Red Cathedral. So this is a fairly recent game for me, and I've only played it at 4-player count. So I've played it several times at 4 players, and that has always been closer to this 120 minutes, if not over. But the game has a lot of things going on, but I find them to be pretty interesting. And so, there may be some recency bias here, like I said, because this is a relatively new game to me. But I do find myself wanting to go back to it. So in the game, you're building the Red Cathedral. So everybody is working on, there's not really a good picture of it here, but this working on the different sort of spires of the cathedral. And so what you can do on your turn is you can actually reserve a section of these spires. You can put a thing out and say, okay, well, I'm going to build this section, and now I'm the only one that can build this. And when you do that, you can get one of these markers, and what these markers do, so this is the purple gem one, you can pay to slot those in one of your dice spaces, and it sort of powers up what happens when you activate the dice. And so what do I mean by activating a dice? So there's this circle of dice over here, and essentially what happens is, let's say I took this white die. So it's a 6. So when I took it, I would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now I would activate this area. So I would get 2 stone normally. But since there's already another die here, I would actually get double that. So I would get 4 stone. And then I would also have the opportunity to activate this thing that's in the quadrant. And what this is saying is you can spend 1 money to make 1 delivery, or 3 money to make 2 deliveries. So what does that mean, deliveries? So the stone I had to have put on my player board, and I have to have space for it. So things get slotted in here. And interestingly, you can't just throw stuff away either. So you have to make use of what's on your board to make room for other things. But anyway, so I could have this stone here, and then I could say deliver 1 stone here, because I need to deliver a stone, a brick, and 2 wood onto this section that I've reserved to get 8 victory points and 4 money. And so, that's one way to get points. And there's 2 sort of different types of points. So you can see here on the track, it goes points, 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 points. But then there's also these prestige points that at the lower end of the track make big jumps, and then later in the track, they make smaller jumps. So deciding when you want to get the prestige points, because if I'm here and I get a prestige point, I just move to the closest one. But if I'm here and I get a prestige point, I jump all the way, which is like getting 3 points. Deciding when do I want to activate the things like putting out my embellishments or whatever on the tower to get those points, prestige points. So that's an interesting decision. Deciding which die to use, which resources to get, which extra thing to tackle, how to manage the resources here on the board, what I should slot in here. Oh, sorry, and I mentioned, so I'd move the white die. If I had slotted, say, this purple gem in my white die space, then because I used the white die, I would get a purple gem. So making all those decisions about how you want all that to work. And then at the end of the game, there are points for sort of area control of each spire, how much each spire is worth, and who gets points. So there's a lot going on there, but once you have learned the game, it's pretty smooth. And like I said, a lot of interesting individual decisions to make each turn, and definitely a lot of, man, am I going to do this before they do that sort of thing. Then, I like that kind of crunchiness. So 64, the Red Cathedral. Next, I have 63, TransAmerica, and you could also put TransEuropa here, which is essentially the same game, but on a European map. So you can see this is a little bit older, 2001, so it's over 20 years old. This is a Mensa Select winner, so I tend to like games that win that award. It goes for 2 to 6 players, and it plays pretty quickly. So here's the map of the USA, and what happens is you're given a city in each of these colors privately, so people don't know what you have. So you'll have a green city, a yellow city, a blue city, a red city, an orange city, and your goal is to be the first to connect all of those cities. So you'll start by just putting your home base somewhere. So maybe you have Minneapolis and Omaha, and you'll start your home base here. And on one turn, what you can do is you can lay 2 pieces of track. So you can just bang, bang, connect to Minneapolis. Or you can lay a double track. So these rivers and tunnels, they cost 2 tracks. So you could lay one into Omaha, right, on another turn. So, okay, now I've connected Minneapolis and Omaha, but now I've got to collect all my other things. But hopefully maybe somebody is building across sort of the Rocky Mountains while you're doing this, and then you can just connect into their rail network because all the rails are shared, and that's what makes this game interesting. You want to be the person who's connecting your cities, not necessarily doing the connections that everybody benefits from. And as soon as somebody connects all of their cities, then everybody else loses sort of points on this track according to how far away they were from completing their objectives. And finally, when somebody falls off the end of this track, whoever is in front wins. So you do this over multiple rounds. It's a very simple game. I'm going to put out 1 or 2 tracks this turn, but it turns into sort of a thinky, sort of a deduction, exercise, and really enjoy it. Number 63, TransAmerica. At 62, I have Tiny Epic Dinosaurs, yet another tiny game. So 1 to 4 players, 30 to 60 minutes. I don't know if I've ever actually completed a game of this in under an hour, but again, only played it at 4 players as well. And this is my favorite of the game. There's several games out there where you're a dinosaur rancher or making a zoo or whatever, right? So that theme. So this is my favorite in that style of game. This is actually a picture of a print and play copy that I had sent from the publisher. But everybody has their own board here, and you're going to put dinosaurs in here, and you're going to get barricades to separate them off, and you have these ranchers, and these ranchers you're going to use to do worker placement things. There's going to be contracts because you're just I guess you're selling your dinosaurs to dinosaur parks or something because you're raising dinosaurs to fulfill these private or public contracts. And you just go down the list of the phases here, right? So as your zoos or as your ranch fills up, you'll cover up more of these symbols, and so you're going to get less resources at the beginning. And when you go to assign the ranchers, it's got that interesting worker placement mechanism where you can go to a space that somebody else has gone, but you have to spend more ranch. So, if they put 1 rancher there, you have to put 2 ranchers there to be able to do that space. And then you get the whatever your ranchers did, and then you have to arrange everything in your ranch. You can rearrange things without a penalty each turn, and then you have to feed your dinosaurs, and they'll break out if you don't feed them, and they can eat each other. The carnivores will eat the omnivores. Omnivores will just smash through barriers and sort of destroy your ranch. Yeah, so like I said, there's several games out here with this theme. This is my favorite in there, so I suggest you check it out. 62, Tiny Epic Dinosaurs. At 61, I have Ethnos, which is a area majority game with some set collection going on. Some people sort of ding the art, at least on the board and these markers, etc., for this game. But I think it's functional, and I think that art on the cards is fine. But essentially what you're doing is you're collecting sets of these different monsters, and every game you play is going to have a different set of monsters that are available. So there's some variability in the setups. That's interesting. But you're going to collect sets of those. When you play the sets of them, you get points based on the sets you built, but then also whichever one you decide is in the lead, so you put it on the top of the stack of that set you're playing, it determines where you get to put a marker that round for this area majority for scoring points in the different phases. And also there's a special ability on the card of each one. So the color and the ability of the monster card you put on top dictates, what you do there. The other interesting thing is you can't just hoard cards. So because on your turn you can, just pick a card or you can play some cards. You can't hoard cards because when you do sort of play a set of allies, whatever, monster cards, then you have to, all the other cards in your hand have to go out onto the table. So it encourages you to not hoard because you're just going to lose those. So it could be, just like any other area majority game, it can be sort of mean, but it's in a good way. I mean, obviously, if you're going to play an area majority game, really popular. I wouldn't mind if it looked better, but this is perfectly functional to me. So number 61, Ethnos. Number 60. Okay, so we have chess. Chess is an interesting one. So I mentioned it. I don't have a lot of two-player only games on my list when I was talking about Raptor. So now here I am talking about chess, another two-player only game, at least in this iteration of it. It's an abstract strategy game. Both sides are set up the same, perfect information. You move your pieces out. You're trying to take opponents' pieces. If you can get a pawn all the way across, you can promote it to be a stronger piece. The king is the piece that everybody has to defend. If somebody can put your king in check, you've got to resolve that, because otherwise, if you can't resolve it, you're in checkmate and you lose the game. I grew up playing chess. Probably this is the most played board game in my life, chess. I used to go to chess tournaments and things like that. And I really like the game. It fell off for me for the years because it's, I don't know, it's really time consuming, right? If you're going to play a game of chess against someone who is very thinky, they'll just take a long time. That's just a little more these days than I want to time and brain power that I want to spend on a game of chess. But if you're going to play it quickly, I do enjoy it. And so recently one of my sons has learned to play chess. And he was really interested in playing it and being cognizant of the fact that, I guess he was 6 years old actually when he started playing it. Being cognizant that a 6-year-old is not going to have a great attention span for something like that. I move quickly and he moves quickly, relatively quickly. That has sort of reinvigorated the game for me. I'm enjoying the game again after putting it down for a while. And so I think that's why it's bubbled up here to be my number 60. Chess. Classic. Number 59 is Alhambra. So this is one of the earlier games from when I first started collecting board games as I got back into the hobby in the early 2000s. And I think it's stood the test of time pretty well. Again, it plays up to 6 players, which is good for my group, and it plays pretty quickly, which is nice. There's some expansions in here, so not everything in here is in the base game. But normally you'll have, so you're building your Alhambra with getting these different building tiles. And so normally these building tiles will be up here. And so say this 7 tile was up here in this green slot, you would need to pay 7 green to take that on your turn. And if you have perfect change, meaning you can pay exactly 7 to get it, then you get to go again. But you could pay an 8 green to get it, and that's fine. So you just don't get to go again. But anyway, so you can take tiles, you can take money cards, and the scoring rounds are sort of shuffled into this deck, so you don't know exactly when they're going to come out, although you have an idea. And in those scoring rounds, you're going to get points for having this set collection, right? Having multiple of a certain color of building versus your opponents. You just want to have more than they do. And at the same time, you're also trying to build like the longest wall to score points. The longer your wall is, the more points you get. And there's some rules about how you can place things inside your Alhambra that can make it difficult. But and this is the game that I would say that I enjoy the most despite being bad at it. So I don't know why I was really bad at this game. I probably played it 7 or 8 times before I won it for the first time, and I didn't care. I still enjoyed the game, and it's always good when you can enjoy a game even when you are doing poorly at it. So Alhambra, my number 59. So at number 58, I have Can't Stop, Sid Sackson classic from 1980. So it's a suggest here 2 to 4 players, and it is really a fast game. So what you have is not shown here, but you'll have 4 d6, and you'll roll those, and you have to separate them into 2 sets. So if you roll a 6, a 6, a 6, and a 5, for instance, right? So you've got a 12 and an 11 there, the only things you can make, and so you can push up your 12 and 11 marker potentially, and then you could just lock that in and take that progress. Or you could decide to go again and roll again, and now you've got to make new sets with the numbers that you have. And so you can only ever be working on 3 columns at a time. So say I'm working on the 6, and I'm working on the 7, and I'm working on the 12 on my turn, and I roll. I rolled that 6, 6, 6, 5, then no problem. I can advance my 12. I can't make any progress on the 11 track because I'm already working on 3 this turn. And then I say, so I could just stop and lock that in, lock in my progress and everything. But then what if I decide to roll again and I roll 4 5s, right? So all I can make is 2 10s now, and I'm not working on the 10 row. So I busted, right? I was pushing my luck and I busted. I lose all the progress I was working on that turn. And it's as if I had been skipped for that turn. And your goal is to be the first to move up and lock out any given number. And you want to do that for 3 different columns. So if, I'm the first one to get the top of 7 and stop, I've locked 7 out. Nobody else can work on 7. And that's one of the 3 things I need to win the game. So this game is really simple. You can teach it to anybody. And it's got that press your luck thing going on. Everybody's paying attention to what you're doing, and you're rolling and cheering for you or against you, I guess, depending on how your game group works. But anyway, that's Can't Stop. My number 58. Coming in at number 57, I have my favorite tiny epic game. So, the 4th tiny epic game, I think, on this list, and my 5th game that started with the word tiny, Tiny Epic Mechs. So Tiny Epic Mechs is pretty unique to my top 100 in that it's a programming game. I can only offhand think of one other programming game it's coming up later on my list. It's also fairly unique in that it's a game where you just beat the heck out of each other. Typically I do like games where you just kind of roll a dice or playing cards and beating the heck out of each other, but they don't usually make my top games lists. But in this one, it's pretty interesting, right? So you're programming 4 actions. I'm going to move, I'm going to do this, etc. So you program 4 in advance, and then everybody resolves those, one at a time. What was my first action, second, etc. And if you run into a square with somebody, you're going to get in a fight with them. And there's a little bit of a rock, paper, scissors thing going on, how different weapons can counter different weapons. And when you start off, you have just one of these little item meeples, and you can have 2 basic weapons, 1 in each hand. If you graduate to the powered armor here, you can have the 2 basic weapons, and then you can have 2 advanced weapons sort of attached to the shoulders here. And if you're in the power armor and full health and get to the middle, you can get the mega mech, and you can have 4 advanced weapons, and you can score extra points with the mega mechs. You're also doing a little bit of area control. You're dropping turrets and mines around, and you get resources based on where those are in the map. The thing about combat in this game is you're encouraged to do combat. So when you do damage to somebody, you get a point for doing that. And if you knock somebody out, you get a point. And, the funny thing is it's not even that bad to get knocked out, right? So it's not like you feel like, oh, I got knocked out and now I'm out of the game. And in fact, in the round that you get knocked out, you switch into ad hoc mode, and instead of having to follow the program that you've laid out for yourself, which quickly goes awry as everybody changes up what they're doing, or as the map and everything changes as people do their stuff. Ad hoc mode means now for the rest of that round you can just decide what cards you're going to play instead of having to follow your program. So it's interesting. It's not that bad to get in a fight. Just get in a fight, get some points. It's all good. So yeah, again, I used the Pub Meeple ranking engine to rank these, so I didn't know how this was going to come out, but this came out as my favorite Tiny Epic game, and I can't argue with that. I really enjoyed Tiny Epic Mechs at number 57. At 56, I have Welcome to. So what is it like? Welcome to Your Perfect Home. Yeah. There are other Welcome to games. Welcome to New Vegas, maybe. I don't like that one. Welcome to the Moon. I also don't really like that one. So I like to stick with this one. And there's a bunch of different maps for this one. I don't know if you call them maps or whatever. But if you want some variety in it, 1 to 100 players. This is a flip and write. You flip over these cards, and then everybody has to write some numbers on their board. And so, theoretically, if you've got enough boards and everybody can see the thing, you can have as many people as you want playing the game. But essentially, you're taking these numbers and you're trying to write them in areas. But once you write a number down, they have to be, sort of sequential. So, if I were to write a larger number sort of here, then it would be harder for me to get later numbers to fit in here. And then, you try to build fences to separate them into neighborhoods to fit different scoring things that are up here. You're sort of racing to get these. The first person to finish one of these gets a bonus, and then other people can subsequently finish those, but they get reduced amount of points. And you get other points here. You can parks and pools and there are things that you can do that cost you points but benefit you, and there's just and like I said, there are different maps that have different scoring. So I like this because it's pretty simple. It's easy to teach. You can play it. You can play it over video conferencing. We've done it that way if you want, or you can play it with a large number of players, simultaneous play, pretty quick. So we always have a lot of time playing Welcome to. So it's my number 56. At number 55, we have Asking for Trobils. So the very orange game. It goes up to 7 players. Again, we like the larger player counts. 60 to 90 minutes. I'd say that's pretty accurate. It doesn't take us too long to play this game. This is a worker placement game, and it's friendly because it has bumping. If somebody is blocking you out of a space, you can just go. They're not really blocking you. If they're at a space you want to go to, you can send your ship to the space, and then you bump their ship and it goes back to them. And that's beneficial because if at some point you don't have any of your ships available, you have to spend an entire turn pulling your ships back. So it's sort of like wasting a turn. It's always better to go somewhere if somebody else wants to go there so they can bump your ship, and then you can go longer before you need to bump again. But it's got this interesting idea that you can sort of power up your ship almost like a little engine, in that when you visit different areas of the map, you can get different of the star map. You can get different bonuses for doing that. So you sort of buy these bonus tiles and say, okay, well, if I'm going to go to the asteroid belt, now I'm going to get 2 extra credits when I go there. And so now, you can sort of make that part of your routine, visiting there to get credits. And ultimately what you're trying to do is you're trying to collect resources, traps and carrots or whatever to capture these Trobils and then go throw them into the sun to score points. There's some expansions coming out for this soon. I'm really looking forward to those because, this is a light worker placement game, and those are a hit with my group. And that is why it is my number 55, Asking for Trobils. At 54, I have another worker placement game that is not so nice in that it does not have a bumping, and is a little bit more complicated, I would say. So 1 to 6 players. I don't usually actually play this one at 6 players. This one I usually play more at 4, but again, 60 to 90 minutes seems about appropriate for our group. And I do play, I've got Viticulture Essential Edition here. I do usually play with the Tuscany Essential Edition elements. But essentially, you've got your own private board where you're getting grapes. So you're planting fields, you're planting vines in fields so you can harvest those to get grapes to put into your cellars, and you can into your pads, and then you can turn them into wines and age them, and then ultimately you want to fulfill deliveries with those and get some points. So, like I said, I usually play with the Tuscany board, which is not the Tuscany board, which has 4 seasons instead of the 2 you get in the regular Viticulture. But this game is I find this more cutthroat than most worker placement games. I find myself constantly being shut out of the actions I want to do, constantly thinking about, well, what is everybody else going to do so I can get to the things I need to do, but I like that about this game, trying to figure out just what is the best way for me to eke out one more point, because usually in this game it's 1 or 2 points that separates the winner when we play. So yeah, my number 54, Viticulture Essential Edition with Tuscany. At number 53, I have Terraforming Mars. So Terraforming Mars, one of the most popular games here on BGG. You see the overall rank is number 4. And there's a lot of stuff for Terraforming Mars, a lot of expansions and things that you can add on. I do play with Prelude, which sort of kickstarts the game, so it doesn't take quite as long. I mean, 120 minutes at 5 players would be a stretch, even with Prelude, I think. Maybe if you know the game really well. But in Terraforming Mars, you're terraforming the planet of Mars, and so you're trying to raise the temperature of the planet. You're trying to raise the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere. You're trying to put out oceans and greenery tiles, and you've got some city tiles that you're going to put out. But essentially, you've got your board where you've got your resources and things. But the key is the card play. You're going to get cards every round, which you have to pay for, and then you're going to play those cards. And you're going to try to build engines off those, essentially to engines that are going to let you collect points because you're, getting microorganisms or something, or maybe you've got some sort of engine where you're going to try to raise the temperature because you get, points for meeting all of the goals for terraforming that planet. And then you have these I forget what they're called, awards or something down here, where you could say, like, I definitely want to make sure that the person I'm going to get enough greenery tiles placed and then take the award for that, or something like that. I forgot what all of these are because it's right there on the board and I can normally look at it. But it's, like I said, it's very popular at BGG, and it's popular with my group too. And I think it's just the engine building. Engine building is a big deal, very popular thing in my group. So number 53, Terraforming Mars. Now, on the opposite side of the spectrum, we have number 52, Ticket to Ride. There's a lot of different flavors of Ticket to Ride. I haven't played all of them. I played the first journey with my kids, and I have the 10th anniversary edition, which is basically the regular Ticket to Ride, just a fancier version. But in fact, here it is, the 10th anniversary edition. It's got very simple gameplay, and that's one good thing about it, right? I can play it with my kids. I can play it with people who aren't regular gamers. You grab on your turn, you can grab cards, or you can play cards to lay down track, or you can try to get new destination tickets, and you're just trying to fulfill these destination tickets by the end of the game to make sure you score points. And making the longer connections gives you points as well when you play them. Trying to find destination tickets that sort of make sense together is part of the game. And this is another game that we sort of play it pretty casually, but you can get cutthroat, right? If there are people who know what destination tickets are out there, or they see, oh man, you're collecting these orange cards, I know you want this link, I'm going to get in there and grab it before you, just to block you out of there, even if I don't even need it, So you can play this game cutthroat, and I've seen people play this game cutthroat, but that's not how our group plays. We just play it as sort of a relaxing, almost filler, but everybody always has a good time doing it. So my number 52, Ticket to Ride. And the last one on my list for this set is number 51, Memoir 44. So it says 2 to 8 players here. I actually only ever play this as a 2-player game. And I have actually only ever played it with my brother. We've been working through the campaign. We play one side will play the allies in a given scenario, and then my brother will play the Axis, and then we'll switch and play the same scenario again, but being on the opposite side. And so each scenario is different. The map layout is different. The troops that are available are different. And the number of cards that you can have is different. And the card play is what really sort of makes this game. And what I like about the game is you will get these stories, right? There'll be some ridiculous thing that happens because some unit, makes some heroic last stand or hold somebody off for enough time and, is able to win you the victory. At the same time, it can be frustrating, right? Like if I could just get a card that let me move my units on the left, I could win this scenario, and then you don't get it and you're losing, but again, that's just, it's like another story. Like, what happened to my units on the left? They just cut off communications. I don't know, because they weren't responding. Just because you couldn't get a card to get them to move. My brother's a big World War II. He's a big history buff in general, so he likes World War II a lot too. So I figured I'd play this game with him, and maybe part of it is just the interaction between me and my brother. And again, this is just I've been playing this a lot recently. Since with the COVID pandemic going on, my brother is one of the people that I have been spending more time with. So number 51, Memoir 44. Well, there you have it. Memoir 44, just missing the top 50 at 51. So I hope you enjoyed this list, this tiny list with 5 tiny games on it. And I think the biggest surprise to me was that there are 3 games on this list that I only play at 2 players. Anyway, stay tuned for the next installment in my top 25. But until then, thanks everybody. We hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please leave a comment or hit the like button. It really does help us out. If you have suggestions for future videos, let us know in the comments as well, and then subscribe to see what we come up with next.